great to be back in Mumbai. It's about a year since I was last here. Can you hear me without the microphone?
Yeah.
All right. And Mansi, thank you very much for organizing this event for us and for hosting us today. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about Hong Kong as a business location. This is a fairly general presentation that talks about some of the generic opportunities, the generic strengths of Hong Kong. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about Hong Kong's startup scene, because that's changing very, very rapidly. And I'd like to leave the bulk of this session really for your initial suggestions, your initial comments, but also any questions you may have about Hong Kong. And don't feel any need to be polite. You can ask me as challenging a question as you like, and I'll do my best to be as candid as I can with you on the answers. And you know, our job is not only to emphasize the positive. We want people to really get a balanced view of Hong Kong, so that whenever people are thinking about, you know, where they should open an office in East Asia, they will at least have an informed view as to what Hong Kong could offer to your particular business. Okay. Let's change it here. First slide I always show is this slide showing the location of Hong Kong. But I'm always reminded that nearly every city in the world has a chart just like this, showing their city at the center of the universe. The reason I feel I need to show it is because most of the companies we help bring into Hong Kong use Hong Kong to access opportunities elsewhere, or they use Hong Kong to then go somewhere else. So Hong Kong is very much a command and control center. And from a base in Hong Kong, you know, we have a geographic advantage, because from Hong Kong you can cover not only the leading cities in China, in Japan, in Korea, you can also, within the same time frame, travel down to Singapore or Kuala Lumpur or cities in Southeast Asia. So Hong Kong has a very specific role as a gateway between both North and Southeast Asia. Another important part of Hong Kong's geography is the area that surrounds Hong Kong in China. And this very small part of Guangdong province, it's about a third of Guangdong province, has emerged into really one of the world's most efficient manufacturing bases. This area we call the Greater Pearl River Delta could almost be considered the world's busiest and biggest city that you've never heard of. Because although it's divided up into a number of separate municipalities, if you were to see a satellite picture of this region, it is just one massive urban sprawl. And to put it in context compared with other nation-state economies, you know, this small part of China has a population bigger than the UK. It exports more than Italy. Its combined GDP is bigger than Turkey, bigger than Indonesia. Yet, it's smaller than Ireland, smaller than Latvia, smaller than Panama in Central America. So for businesses that are not big multinationals, but want to begin to do business with China, you have to start somewhere. China, like India, is a continental-sized economy with really a number of discrete market economies within the country. So finding the right starting point is important. And we believe that starting in Hong Kong, addressing this very affluent, densely populated part of China is as good a place to start as anywhere. Now the other thing about Hong Kong is that Hong Kong, of course, is part of China, but under the one country, two systems model, Hong Kong enjoys a very high degree of autonomy. So Hong Kong remains an English common law jurisdiction. Our judges still wear this rather old-fashioned costume. We're part of the English common law family. We have a separate immigration policy. People with Indian passports can visit Hong Kong for 2 weeks visa-free. You can't do that with the rest of China. And Hong Kong Chinese passport holders have visa-free access to more than 140 countries visa-free. So it's a very liberal visa regime. And also our tax system is completely separate to the rest of China. And Hong Kong, in our mini constitution, the basic law, it's actually written that Hong Kong must remain a low tax economy. So it's not just that our corporate tax is 16.5%. It's not just that if, as an individual, all the income tax you're ever required to pay is 15% of your salary, never more. It's the fact that it's so predictable, so transparent, and so simple. And other sources of income that would certainly be taxable in other parts of China, or taxable here, or taxable in Europe, are tax-free in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong doesn't have any sales tax. We don't have any capital gains tax. We don't tax investment income of any kind. So if you pay yourself in dividends, that's tax-free income. We only tax salary. And you know, we're a jurisdiction that only taxes income that's derived in and from Hong Kong. We do not tax on a global basis. Hong Kong is very compact. It's a very modern city with great transportation infrastructure. And because Hong Kong is so compact, it's been fairly easy for us as a government to join all those high-rise buildings with fiber optic. And so Hong Kong has some of the best infrastructure for technology and ICT of any city in the world. We have some of the highest penetration rates for broadband, for smartphones, for tablets, for mobile phones, 237% penetration rate for mobile phones. In effect, that means that every person in Hong Kong on average has at least 2 mobile phones. Most babies don't need mobile phones, so you know, on average you could say 3 mobile phones per person. And you know, in terms of broadband, we have some of the fastest broadband speeds, and some of the. We also have a reputation for being a society, a market of early adopters. People love the latest technology, the latest apps, the latest products, and will quickly flip and change models to make sure they have got the latest smartphone. Unlike India, I mean, Hong Kong doesn't have much in the way of natural resources. We don't have much in the way of agriculture. Really, the only principal resource that Hong Kong has are its people. And so, as a government, we spend more on education than any other item of expenditure. And in many respects, this investment in education pays off because we have some of the best universities, not just in China or in East Asia, but in the world. Some of the best business schools in the world. And so Hong Kong is rapidly becoming an important hub for executives who want to go join our executive MBA programs, but also you've got a great pool of talent in Hong Kong that you can draw upon. Now those are the things that haven't changed much in Hong Kong, but in the last decade, some real business opportunities have begun to emerge quite quickly. The first business opportunity, and it's fairly simplistic, is really a business to consumer opportunity. And this opportunity stems from the fact that, you know, we have a lot of wealthy people in Hong Kong. We've got a growing number of high net worth individuals in and around Hong Kong, a growing number of family offices. And this wealthy segment of China's population are becoming more and more mobile. To the point that in 2013, Hong Kong received close to 55 million visitors. Last year, the figure we estimate will be close to 57 million visitors. Most of them come from mainland China. Most of them are middle class, fairly wealthy individuals. And the visitors that we receive from Asia basically travel for one reason. They travel to shop. And so you have tremendous concentrations in Hong Kong of the brands, the products, the services that this wealthy segment of China's population want to buy. So if you travel to Hong Kong, you'll see more Burberrys than you might see in London, more Gucci's than you might see in Milan, and a tremendous range of luxury products, food products, but also private banking and consulting products for that wealthy segment of particularly China's population. And so for Indian companies that have a business to consumer offer, our message is you don't need to open up right across China. Start in Hong Kong and your customers will come to you. And Hong Kong is like a goldfish bowl. Everybody wants to see what's in Hong Kong before they expect to see it in Shanghai or Beijing or elsewhere. So it's a great place to really raise your visibility across the region and particularly across China from one base, even though our population is only 7 million people. The second opportunity that's begun to emerge quite rapidly in Hong Kong is much more of a business-to-business offer. And this stems from the fact that Hong Kong doesn't just attract mainland individual visitors, we're starting to attract a lot of mainland companies, both the state-owned enterprises and the privately owned enterprises. And of course, they're not using Hong Kong as a gateway to China. They are using Hong Kong in the opposite direction. They're using Hong Kong as their springboard to go global. So 60% of all China's overseas outbound investment is structured through Hong Kong. Mainland companies, when they want to invest overseas, need approval, and when they set up in Hong Kong, it's just the same. They have to go through an approval process if they're going to do it legally. But once they have a subsidiary in Hong Kong, they're already in the world's freest economy. And they can then decide to acquire companies, to make greenfield investments in India, in any part of the world, freely. They don't need to ask anybody's permission once they have that subsidiary in Hong Kong. And because Hong Kong is a very important financial center, you've got 70 of the world's top 100 banks. I think we have 15 Indian banks in Hong Kong now. And so they've got a range of financial service providers that can help them to fund their mergers and acquisitions, sometimes back in China, but increasingly overseas. And so for Indian service providers, this presents a great opportunity to be there in Hong Kong and then support those state-owned enterprises, those privately owned enterprises, and there are thousands now in Hong Kong, when they want to invest here. So that means accounting firms, it means law firms, it means design firms, because many mainland brands have a brand that works perfectly fine for the domestic market in China, but often it doesn't really work in an international context. And mainland companies now recognize that they need the expertise of specialist design firms to help them to get and become global players. As a department, and we are a government department, we measure the amount of foreign direct investment inflows and outflows from Hong Kong. In the year 2013, which is these figures, Hong Kong was ranked number 4 in the world. Only the United States, China, and Russia received more foreign direct investment than little Hong Kong. So 77 billion US dollars was invested into subsidiaries in Hong Kong, but you can see even more was invested by Hong Kong-based companies overseas from Hong Kong. So Hong Kong's ranked number 5 in terms of outbound investment. 92 billion US dollars was invested from Hong Kong overseas. For 2014, because we don't expect Russia to be doing quite so well, there's a good chance that Hong Kong will move back up to be number 3 for inbound and number 4 for outbound. But all of these big foreign direct investment flows, this role that Hong Kong has as a conduit, creates opportunities for service providers to direct and manage and facilitate those investment decisions. Some recent trends that we've started to see in Hong Kong. The first is that, because of our location, we almost take for granted the fact that Hong Kong serves as a very good Asia-Pacific hub. But in the last few years, some leading companies have started to use Hong Kong not just to manage their operations in Asia, but really to manage certain activities on a global basis. Probably the most significant for us is GE. For the first time, General Electric from the US decided to base their vice chairman outside of their headquarters in the US. This chap, John Rice, decided that he would manage GE's family of businesses from Hong Kong. So he's managing GE's operations everywhere outside of North America, including South America and Africa and here, from a base in Hong Kong with a very senior executive team. If we take Nissan, Carlos Ghosn, the chief executive of Nissan, decided to move the global headquarters of his luxury car brand, the Infiniti brand, from Tokyo, Yokohama to Hong Kong. And from France, Schneider Electric, in some ways a competitor of GE, their global CEO and a third of their top senior executive team have relocated from Paris and are now based in Hong Kong. And we hope other companies will start to do this more and more. Now that's not the whole story. What's also taken us a little bit by surprise is that we're starting to see developments at the other end of the business spectrum. And although Hong Kong is a long way behind Silicon Valley, Tech City in London, Silicon Alley in New York, you name it, these are very well established startup hubs, and of course Bangalore and Mumbai here. But although we're starting a little bit late, Hong Kong is really getting a lot of traction as a center for entrepreneurs. And what sets Hong Kong apart from some of these other centers is that we're a truly international center for entrepreneurship. We've got founders and entrepreneurs coming from all over the world to start brand new businesses in Hong Kong. And so as a department, we've created a whole initiative called StartMeUp.hk, a venture program, a website, and many other things to support the foreign-born entrepreneurs that are looking to start new businesses in our city. The good news is it's not that hard. Barriers to entry in Hong Kong are incredibly low. For you to start a business, or me, my colleague Elsie over there who's from Hong Kong, it's exactly the same. You don't need any special permission, you don't need any special license to start a business. You need 3 ones. You need minimum capital of $1 Hong Kong. You don't need a local partner in Hong Kong, you need 1 director, and you can incorporate a company, or your accountant can incorporate your company in 1 hour online. So barriers to entry are very, very low in Hong Kong. And in a minute you're going to hear from not a startup, but a very established business leader in Hong Kong. Vijay is going to talk a little bit about his business in Hong Kong, which has been there for quite a long time, so I wouldn't call it a startup. But he'll give you an idea of what it's like to do business in our city. And it's interesting how quickly it's growing. We look at the co-work spaces, the incubators that we have in Hong Kong. Most of them are privately funded. If we go back to 2010, we had 3. Today, we have 35. They're springing up all over Hong Kong. And it's not just local entrepreneurs, local founders that are starting these incubators. The big guys are getting in on it too. KPMG have just opened their 2nd global center for data analytics in Hong Kong. Accenture has set up a co-work space focusing only on fintech in Hong Kong. One of our big property developers, Swire Properties, has set up another co-work space that's focusing on business-to-business solutions, and so on. So it's really starting to accelerate and take off quite quickly. Startups, well, we've counted how many people are in those 35 co-work spaces, and in December we had 1,065 startups. But of course there are many more startups that are not located in co-work spaces, so that's just a fraction. We also look at which nationalities are applying for investor visas. These are the visas we give to people that want to start their own business in Hong Kong. India is #1 and has been #1 for the last 5 years. What's interesting is that some countries like France are moving up the ranking. France is ranked #2. So it's relatively easy to get a visa to start your own business in Hong Kong, and that's again something that we support with. But our startup ecosystem's a little bit older than perhaps some of the startup ecosystems in terms of the age of the founders than you might find here or in Silicon Valley. They tend to be in their 30s rather than in their 20s. Some are even in their 40s and older. Around 40% of our founders come from overseas, are voting with their feet, coming with their life savings to start a brand new business in Hong Kong. And around 7% are people that originally came from Hong Kong but may have studied or worked overseas for some time. Most of our startups are less than 2 years old. It's a very young ecosystem. And because we have so many high net worth individuals, we believe there's a tremendous opportunity to get these family offices, these wealthy individuals to become more active angel investors. And so much of what we're doing is communicating some of these opportunities that these startups present to these potential angel investors. And of course the universities, Google, all the big players are starting to become much more active, as I'm sure they are here in Mumbai. We do a number of events. We have a Start Me Up forum, a business plan competition that we hold every year. We had a good number of entries for that competition, up 30% on the year before. And next year, a year from now, we plan to do a very large startup event in Hong Kong, hopefully on a similar scale to the Web Summit in Dublin, or Slush in Finland, or South by Southwest in Texas. We're looking to do probably one of the biggest startup events, certainly in East Asia, a year from today. What do we do as a department? Well, we're a little bit unusual in that most of our colleagues are not civil servants. About 30% of my colleagues are career civil servants. The other 70% come from the private sector. And so we try to provide decision makers with information on Hong Kong on a one-to-one basis, on a confidential basis. And then once a company decides they want to set up an office and have at least one person based there, we provide practical help. We provide help with getting visas, help with getting some publicity if you want to tell people you're there, help with networking opportunities, and many other things to make sure that when people do set up, they're as successful as they can be. And they can grow as rapidly as they can. All these services are completely free of charge. All the discussions we have with companies one-on-one are strictly confidential. I'll conclude a little bit by showing this is our traditional website. It has a lot more information on the opportunities and sectors where companies may feel that there are particular opportunities for their businesses. But also please feel free to connect with me personally on LinkedIn or on the other social media. We also find that quite a useful tool for introducing people to investors and to potential partners. Ashish has recently taken over as our lead consultant in India. He's at your service here in Mumbai, but we also have colleagues based in a number of other cities, including Chennai and Bangalore and Delhi, that can provide support to entrepreneurs in those cities. I think that's what I'll conclude with now. And I'll hand over to Vijay, who can talk a little bit about his own personal experience of Hong Kong. Vijay, over to you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
How many Indians are actually in India?
It's hard to say. Do you know why? Because some of the Indians have been in Hong Kong so long, they actually have Hong Kong SAR passports. And Not everybody has to register with us, so we don't know. One of the downsides of being the world's freest economy is that people don't have to use us. But I think
I will give.
Vijay could probably give you a better idea of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Nancy. My name is Vijay Sheikh. I'm from the countryside of the Gujarat, and I moved to Hong Kong in year 1995. First, I would like to give your answer. There is a total number of Indian people in Hong Kong is the 33,000. Is including the Hong Kong passport holder and all the things. Number, that means they are the Indian origin.
Good.
Okay. So I would like to share my experience with the Hong Kong with you. When I moved to Hong Kong in 1995, because I'm not highly qualified or educated or nothing. So I just moved to Hong Kong because of my company. I was working with them. They sent me as a sales representative. And I'm not fortunate enough to take the help of the Invest Hong Kong, because the Invest Hong Kong is formed in Hong Kong in year 2000 and I moved in 1995. But to take the help from the other people, friends, colleagues, customers and all things. So I would like to share some points of the Hong Kong, which is very,
Before
very
you do
important.
that, I want you to use the mic. It's not audible.
And I will raise my voice. Yeah, I'm fine.
If you want, you can use the mic.
No.
You'll raise
I'm
your
fine.
voice. Okay.
So the first of all, as the Simon show in the presentation, the geographical location of Hong Kong is the very nice. If, for example, I have my business and I have my office in Hong Kong, so I can cover all the nearby countries, my neighbor countries like Singapore, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, China, Philippines. All these countries are very accessible to the Hong Kong, and for them it's also very easy to come to Hong Kong. Another thing is the very good infrastructure. Hong Kong has a really, really very good infrastructure. I would like to give one example. I'm going back to Hong Kong tomorrow. Tomorrow night I have the flight. And my daughter is studying in the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And she has the very important interview in the university at 11:40 in the morning. My flight will land at the 10 o'clock, but we can catch that time and all the things. So it's for everything. The infrastructure is the best infrastructure. The transportation is the number one, I can say. Another thing is the world-best banking system. The banking system is also the very nice. People are really very helpful and everything. I can say this. I think we got the number one. This thing is the banking system award for the Hong Kong. And another thing is for the safety wise, I can say it's a very, very low crime rate. Hong Kong has a very good safety. There is very less crime rate. Another thing is the very good weather, especially when we go from Mumbai. I can say it's the second Mumbai. It's a very, very perfect weather.
Although I think Mumbai is a bit warmer today.
Yeah. Yeah, but if we compare to the another Western country or the northern city of China, the Hong Kong is the much better. Another thing, as the Simon showed in that presentation, the taxation. Taxation is the very nice. There is the flat, I can say, is a 16.5% income tax. There is no sell tax. There is no restriction of the currency. There is no restriction of anything. Even though if you have the 100,000 US dollar, if you want to deposit in the bank, or if you wanted to withdraw in the bank, there is no question, nothing. Okay, for myself, I'm doing the diamond business. We have the manufacturing facilities in India. We are making our diamonds in India. So actually my purpose of visit to India is to participate in the Gandhinagar, the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. I went there on the 8th of January and I get chance to meet Mr. Modi again. And as per his slogan, Make in India, I'm already doing these things. But along with that, Make in India and sell in China or sell in Hong Kong. So that things we have, and I'm really very happy to see all of you young guys, all young entrepreneurs, is you have the lot of opportunity to do something in Hong Kong. It's really a great opportunity. Grab it. If you have any question or something, please contact Ashish or Simon. You will get the good guidance. Thank you very much. Sure.
I think we have time for questions. So if there are any questions, just introduce yourself. Oh, we have the first question. Would you need a mic or?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
So if we
just introduce yourself and which company once again.
Yeah.
Sorry, because a lot of people joined late.
Sure. So Bhavik Chennai from BBC. We have a logistics company, security and tourism, and we have a family angel fund as well. And but anyway, for the logistics company that we want to set up and a trading entity, if we have a domestic company once we set up in Hong Kong, if we want to do local transactions, is there anything like a VAT registration that we need to do there?
What registration?
VAT registration.
We don't have VAT in Hong Kong, so there's no requirement to register.
So on what registration do we need to do to start trading, selling to Hong Kong based companies?
Okay, the very basic, there's a business registration,
Okay.
which is a simple registration with the Inland Revenue, so that if you make a profit, you pay tax. That's the very basic. If you don't want to have a limited liability company, if you're a sole trader, you need that. But then, of course, if you want to, most people would choose to have a limited liability company. It's so simple. It's the simplest form of incorporation in Hong Kong. And again, the requirements are very simple. There's no minimum capital, and you don't need local partners in Hong Kong, unlike other places. So, the key thing is to find an accounting firm that can give you advice on the structure to make sure it's as flexible as possible. The other thing about Hong Kong is that, it is very flexible. You can start off by forming a company to do one thing, and later on, if your plans change, you can use the company to do other things. Many people start off by perhaps having Hong Kong as a sourcing operation. So they set up a buying office, and then later on they decide they want to go into trading. They want it to become a profit center. No problem with that. You can change, pivot, decide to do something different. Nobody cares, so long as it's legal.
So each company has its own registration number, but can we use that number to export as well? Or for export there is some other registration?
There's no real, it depends on what products.
Okay.
There are very few products in Hong Kong that require an export license.
Okay.
All right? And of course, Hong Kong isn't a manufacturing base. Hong Kong is still very much a logistics base, the world's busiest air cargo airport, still a very busy port, although some of the China ports surrounding Hong Kong have overtaken us, because the cargo comes from elsewhere in the Borough Delta. That's the manufacturing base, but it still comes down into Hong Kong.
So just one question. So if we want to procure from Shenzhen and export to India, do we need some other registration because you're importing and exporting?
Again, depends on the products. If it's textiles, you may need it.
Electronics?
Electronics, I don't think so. I don't think so. But of course, if the goods are being made elsewhere in China, then you have to be compliant with the mainland Chinese regulations, because that's the origin of the goods.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
I founded a tech company. Right? So one of our main concerns is usually hiring tech guys or talent acquisition. Is Hong Kong a good place to build talent?
it can be, but I think everywhere has a challenge with finding talent at the moment. We have some cultural challenges for startups, which we're trying to address. We've got some very bright people, but we've got two challenges for startups. One is that because we're a very successful financial service center, the financial service industry is like a great black hole that sucks up all our engineering talent as soon as they graduate. And then once they've been in financial services for a while, they tend not to go back into a technology or an R&D type field. The other challenge is kind of a cultural challenge, and that is that after Hong Kong parents have sent their son or daughter to study in the US or UK, the last thing they want to hear is, Mum and Dad, I want to start my own business. They want them to join Goldman Sachs or one of the big banks. So we're trying to address that by showing just how successful some of these startups like 9gag have been, how quickly they can grow. And we're looking at trying to set up some sort of internship program where if a bright grad joins the program and works for a startup, and if that startup doesn't exist in 5 years' time, there isn't this great big black hole in that young person's CV. They could be part of a government program, so they've got that recognition. We want to try and address that. So there are some challenges, but it's becoming more and more cool to be involved in the startup community. And the percentage of local startups is rising, even though the overall pie is. Last year it would have been 80% local, 80% foreign founders, 20% local. Now it's almost 50-50. It's also quite easy to bring talented people into Hong Kong, but there are two things you have to bear in mind. Number one, they must have the right qualifications for the job. Number two, they must be paid the going salary for that job. If you can satisfy our immigration of those two things, it's relatively easy to bring talented people in to come.
Hi, this is Vishal, CEO of CyberSetu. So as we are in Cloud California, we want to start a digital wallet in the South Asia market. So my question, what is the next step? I want to start from tomorrow. So what is the quick process? And then what is the closing formality? That's I want to understand, because some countries, opening a company is very easy, but closing company takes, very difficult. So I want to know that what is the as I heard about in Dubai free zone and something where, so I want to know that like we want to take a risk, definitely want to take risk something. Then, but what is the formalities to closing the company?
Well, it's easy come, easy go in Hong Kong. All right, and generally speaking, winding up a company is not a particularly difficult thing, providing you're not owing people money and so on. The other barrier, we've seen a huge increase in the number of French entrepreneurs come to Hong Kong. 5 years ago, we had 3,000 French nationals in Hong Kong. Today, we've got 18,000. And when we go to France and we say you can register a company in an hour, they say, yeah, but what's the catch? There must be something else. And the thing that surprises the most is our employment law. Because in Hong Kong, it's very easy to hire people, but also fairly easy to let them go if the business needs to. It's a very flexible labor market in Hong Kong. In some other markets, it's much more difficult. Once you hire somebody, you can never get rid of them unless you wind the company up. So you've got that flexibility in Hong Kong.
Because as I understand, previously we must be required local one directors to have in a company.
Not in Hong Kong.
But now it's not required.
So before also not.
Before
Never.
No.
Okay.
Singapore maybe, but not Hong Kong.
Okay, so how much it takes times to make the operate like we have, because as we are into a technology firm, so maybe we don't start recruit employee immediately based over there. We handle our entire operation from India. Once we start sales has been generated and see that okay, this much team is required to locate over there, then this we locate our office space, residence space. So it's we can just start office virtually for starting few months, and later on we can utilize the property over there. So it's okay, or we must be have to physical space required over there in Hong Kong.
Ultimately, we'd love you to employ somebody in Hong Kong, even if it's only one person. All right?
But it's a condition, or
No, it's not a condition.
Yeah.
Not a condition.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Maybe after 3-4 months we can start to get employment locally, but initially maybe it's not required. Once we started make a base when we start our operation. So how much it takes time to start? 1 month. What is the procedure?
1 hour.
1 hour only. Okay.
I have to be a little bit more upfront with you. Opening a bank account takes a bit longer. Because of the know your customer rules, it's got tougher. And it's not just in Hong Kong. And the big banks like HSBC and Standard Chartered are very risk averse at the moment because of the fines they've had in the US about opening bank accounts. But you've got Indian banks, you've got Australian ANZ Bank, which is quite receptive. Yesterday, DBS is also very good.
Then how much it takes time around, like I maintain relationship with HSBC since 12 years, so there is a good track record of India. So normally how much takes time to opening bank account, because then only we can start the transaction in there. Because normally 1 month, 2 months.
Depends on what you're going to use the bank account, depends how much cash you're going to be putting through it. But yeah, I mean, you need to allow a few weeks for that.
Because then only, I target China markets. It's easy for them to, use my services, remit the money in Hong Kong instead of they transfer money to India actually. So when it is a daily based transaction, we use this Hong Kong company to more convenience for the Chinese manufacturers.
Okay. So
Okay,
banks have a KYC norm, know your customer norm. If you satisfy all the KYC, know your customer norms, it typically takes a couple of weeks to open a bank account. But the entire process, registration, bank account opening, is not going to take more than a couple of weeks.
And
Try to do as much as you can from here. So talk to your if you're going to use HSBC, talk to your branch manager here. Get him to start doing the paperwork and the introduction, so that the moment you arrive in Hong Kong, you've got your checklist of documents. They want to see who the beneficiaries are of the bank account, who the directors and so on will be at the account. So often you do need to visit Hong Kong.
And fulfilled about your requirement, normally how many visits required to start? Like everything is possible by sitting in India to just not about bank, but about your formalities to having opening a company over there. Is need to visit over there, Hong Kong?
Actually, that's not a big deal. You can your service providers can incorporate the company for you, and you can just come and sign the documents.
And we can give you a list of accountants and service providers. We can't give you one because that's not allowed, but we can give you a list of accountants and
you
service
choose.
providers, and you can choose who can help you
So we
set
can
up.
commit it from here, and finally we need to visit at least 1 or 2 times to make all.
sign the bank.
Only to sign the bank documents to get the bank account open, not for registering the company.
Registration is required. Okay. Thank you so much.
But connect later, and we'll try and help you one-to-one on that.
Person in next to you.
Yes. You also help identifying partners there in those markets?
When you say partner, what type of partner? Because partner can be many things.
Technology companies, so we have a technology company, but we want to have a technology company as a partner.
Well, we can try. But that, we're working actively with around 800 companies that are planning to set up in Hong Kong at any given time. And so really doing a very in-depth partner matching service is beyond our limited resources. But what we can do, if you go into the co-work spaces, it's a great place to find people to collaborate with. In this open plan environment, there are so many. Thai, of course, has a chapter in Hong Kong, very good for networking, but you've got many other organizations, Web Wednesdays, Tech Tuesdays, social events in the evenings where you can go along, meet other entrepreneurs, meet potential investors, and hopefully find people you can collaborate with. Hong Kong, unlike Mumbai, is very compact. It's like a village, and if you are active, you can network very fast. One of the reasons that entrepreneurs tell us they come to Hong Kong, and they come to Hong Kong, we're not offering incentives to entrepreneurs. They come because they genuinely feel that they can get things done quickly. And for entrepreneurs that have a product or service that they feel is really a game changer, there's tremendous pressure to get that product out there before somebody beats you to it. And in Hong Kong, you can do 9-10 meetings a day because it's so compact. You can prototype in Hong Kong very, very rapidly. You can upscale and manufacture in Shenzhen, and you've got one of the world's most effective manufacturing basins on your doorstep. So this combination of factors means that it is a great place to start and do things. And the government doesn't get in your way. You don't have to worry about which licenses you need, or employment law, or tax filing. We're not going to get in your way at all. Just go there with your laptop, get into a co-work space, rent a seat, and get cracking. And you can do a lot in a short space of time.
Excuse me, I have one question.
Sure.
Do you also have incentive programs like Singapore has?
No. No. We do for two things. If you're really doing R&D, we'll give you a matching grant. So the government will match whatever investment you want to put into that R&D project. It's very simple. The second thing is, if you are looking to market a brand or a product in the rest of China, and you're a small or medium-sized enterprise, we give a 50% rebate on some of those marketing costs. So if you have an office in Hong Kong, and you want to sell your products in Shanghai, you want to go to a trade show, we'll give you a 50% rebate on the cost of participating in that trade show. Because once you've set up a company in Hong Kong, you are a Hong Kong company, and you get that type of support.
I think a question over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Sunil, again in agri and e-commerce space. So we are actively into exports from India in terms of foods. If we had to set up an office in, let's say, Hong Kong as an importing subsidiary, how are the regulations in regards to agri?
Pretty liberal in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But bear in mind, we have to import all our food. We don't really grow very much at all. But people in Hong Kong are very concerned about food safety. They're very concerned about quality. And they're very concerned about authenticity. So, although Hong Kong's a population of 7 million people, we are the largest food market for Japanese exports. Japan exports more to Hong Kong than to the United States. And Japanese products aren't known for being very cheap.
Right.
So I use that as just to show you that for premium products, people are not price sensitive so long as you can show that it's the quality and it's safe. All right. We also import food from mainland China, but people are a little bit more concerned sometimes about some safety
I
aspects.
visited the Asia Food Logistics and I was very impressed.
Yeah. But we had a lot of our clients, a lot from South America, are being quite aggressive. We now have direct flights to Mexico for the first time. And so a lot of the Mexican fruit growers are looking to come into Hong Kong. Chile has been quite aggressive in recent years, but there's room for others to come in.
So, but do you think it's a practical solution, being based here, having an office based in Hong Kong, a virtual office, per se?
Why not?
Which could act as an importing entity, and then have partnerships to be able to promote our products.
But I'd suggest that you don't just focus on Hong Kong. I would suggest use it
As a
to
base. for
focus on that market first. Make sure you're getting some revenue for that
Right.
office, but then use it as a bridgehead to start tackling Taiwan, tackling certain cities in the mainland. Try not to give a single distribution for mainland China, almost nobody can really do that, even if they claim
We're
they
looking
can.
at premium markets.
Yeah.
We're looking at not as price sensitive. So I think Hong Kong probably fits that profile.
It does. It does. We've got another client, another Japanese client, and believe it or not, they arranged to deliver small food boxes of fruit from Japan to individual houses in Hong Kong. That cannot be very cost effective, but again,
We do that right now.
but again, if you can show it's the quality and it's what people want, people will do that for the
We
convenience.
ship fruit from India
Door to
directly
door.
to individuals in Hong Kong.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So there is a market for it.
Yeah, thanks.
There was a question at the back and then lady.
Yeah.
That's the
Hi.
lady first.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Fauzia. I run a management consulting and training organization out of Mumbai. My question is, what is the average cost of setup? What would be like when I actually want to plan to set up, and what is the cost of living?
Oh.
Is what I-
Well, unfortunately, nobody complains to me that Hong Kong's too cheap. But it depends. There is a whole range of options in Hong Kong, which is one of the things I love about Hong Kong. It's a city of complete contrasts. And so it can be as expensive as you want. And believe me, we have some very high rentals, similar perhaps to some of your buildings in Mumbai. But what's a little bit special about Hong Kong is that even within a very small area, you've got a tremendous range of different office accommodation options, from probably some of the most expensive in the world, but you can go 2 blocks and you can find an office that could be 30% of that cost. Go 2 or 3 stops on a subway and you could probably get another 30% or 40% off on that lower price within Central. So the perception scares people because the headline rents are going to be up there with the West End of London and Mumbai and Tokyo and so on. But unlike Shanghai or London, you've got this range of options within a small area. So that's offices. And you know, we have all these co-work spaces, these 35 co-work spaces competing to provide seats for young entrepreneurs in Hong Kong. Because they've grown so many and so rapidly, there's an oversupply. So you can rent a seat in a co-work space for around 200 euros a month. But it is only a seat, not a desk. But you've got different options. You've got virtual office options as well. And our philosophy is that we don't want people to come in and have too high a cost base. We would rather people start small, grow their business as their revenue develops, and stay for the long term, rather than come in too big and then have to pull out. So that's offices. Cost of living to live, apartments are expensive, but I often find it quite amusing because we deal with a lot of bankers coming from London or New York or Tokyo. And when they were in London, they might commute an hour and a half to the office every day. The moment they arrive in Hong Kong, 15 minutes is too long. And so everybody traditionally wants to live right on top of the office and the mid-levels. If you're willing to commute by ferry for half an hour, you can save 60% of the cost on an apartment in the mid-levels by commuting there. If you're willing to go to the new territories, there are much more cost-effective models, but you're probably not going to have a large apartment. Apartments tend to be very small, and they are apartments. If you want a house, that's another story in Hong Kong. So it's about managing your own expectations, but also choosing the type of accommodation that suits your lifestyle. As I say, if you're willing to commute by ferry, willing to travel in by train, you can save a bit of money.
Thank you.
There's a question over there, Simon.
Sorry?
Hong Kong is a special administrative region under China. So do you think this will continue for long? Because I think there was a challenge the Chinese government, they wanted to appoint their own CEO for the city.
Yes, we've had a few political challenges in recent months. The basic model, the one country, two systems model that Deng Xiaoping introduced, when it was first announced in the 1980s, was very revolutionary. And in the run-up to 1997, nobody really knew if this was going to work. But the model that's been put in place is for 50 years. So from 1997 to 2047, Hong Kong will enjoy this special administrative region status and enjoy this high degree of autonomy. Now, Hong Kong at the moment is going through some political change. Hong Kong is a city, a middle-class city with a very well-educated population. Per capita GDP is similar to Switzerland. And so people aspire to have more say over their elected officials, and particularly the head of our government, who we call the chief executive. And so, students are very keen to have not just one person, one vote, but they want to make sure that the pool of candidates they vote for includes people from all ends of the political spectrum. Beijing, though, is less happy about that. They don't mind choosing between 3 or 4 candidates, but they want to be comfortable with those 3 or 4 candidates. And that's what's caused a lot of the political Occupy Central movement that we had a couple of months ago. we talk to a lot of businesses, and amongst the startup community, they find it quite refreshing that the young people in Hong Kong are idealistic, maybe not realistic, but aspire for this higher degree of autonomy, that there's a lot going on. You know, when we see footage of Hong Kong during the Occupy movement and the tear gas, you know, it's a bit like an out-of-body experience. You sort of double take to see if it's really the city where you're living in, because most of that movement was a very peaceful, orderly demonstration. People recycling their rubbish, people, you know, just simply camping on the street. But you know, we have to think about this, because young people's aspirations, one of the problems we have is because we have a lack of housing, young people find it difficult to get their foot on the property ladder. It's probably not unique to Hong Kong, it's probably similar to here or London, but it's a frustration for people when they get married, they really cannot find an apartment that they can afford. And so there are a number of social tensions that are created by this inequality. And so as a government, we have to do more to increase the supply of public housing and to give the young people a chance to follow their dreams and have the lifestyle they aspire to for what is a wealthy city. But it is very safe. And as Vijay said, you know, sometimes when I travel around the world, people's only impression of Hong Kong was watching Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan movies with, you know, people fighting with nunchuckers on every street corner. The reality is Hong Kong is really one of the safest cities in the world. Your children can go traveling out by taxi, you know, it is incredibly safe. I'm coming from London or Paris, way safer, way safer. In fact, when I take my children back to the UK, I have to re-educate them how to behave when they go on the underground in London. But in Hong Kong, it's very, very safe. Sorry.
What about the language barrier we have, because in most of the part of the Hong Kong, Mandarin is spoken?
In most of Hong Kong, the main language is Cantonese.
Yeah, Cantonese.
But the official languages in Hong Kong are Chinese and English, which is good for me because I don't speak very much Cantonese. And so, you know, the working language of my department is English, but we've got people from different nationalities. And I mean, it depends on what business you're in. If you're really trying to sell something to the average consumer in Hong Kong, you're going to need somebody in your team that can speak Cantonese. If you're a business-to-business company that wants to target the thousands of mainland companies in Hong Kong, increasingly you need somebody who can speak Mandarin Chinese to be able to do business with them. But for financial services and most companies, English will do you pretty well. All right, much easier to do that in Hong Kong than in other cities in China.
I think that's
sorry.
the last question.
Okay,
Yeah?
sorry.
We're running out of time, sorry.
Apologies,
Yeah,
sorry.
we can take the others offline, yeah?
Okay, sure. Just wanted to ask about what would be the average rental near the airport or the port?
Near the airport in Tung Chung?
It's about $15,000
Were you asking for a living accommodation?
No, commercial, office.
Commercial office?
There is not much there.
I think we can get more information.
We can say, what would be good for us is if you can tell us what type of space you're looking at, size of space,
Sure.
and what you want to use it for, and then we can give you some options.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much, Simon. It was, I got a lot of information about Hong Kong, and maybe when I start up, I will definitely look at Hong Kong as one of the options. Very commendable that he opened up a lot. He answered a lot of challenging questions, which otherwise a lot of people refrain from doing. So I think a round of applause for him, please. And I'm sure he always brings